Good evening, and welcome to Restored Lore, your home for old, odd, and obscure stories on YouTube. So now, let's open our imaginations and begin. Part 1. I was sitting over my fire in my hut in Benanga Creek, Wyoming, when the idea came to me, weakly, dreamily at first, but later on strongly and vividly, that I must go home. It was, as I confusedly made it, 7 years since I left Europe. I felt the thing that had driven me forth less keenly, and I realized that in 7 years things must have quieted down a bit. Sally, too, being of a cheerful, easy-going make, would have forgotten what had happened on that one night, since in the nature of the case there could have been no discovery, no scandal. No one could have known anything about it. No one had witnessed her act except Roger, my dog, who now lay so quietly, numb with advancing age, between my feet in front of the fire. Roger had been only a year old on that short summer night, a clumsy, flopping puppy that followed me unsteadily, swaggering from side to side down the garden path of the old haunted manor house where Sally James lived. It was flagged with broad white stones, and the gate of it opened straight onto the road that led to Durham, to Darlington, and to the other ends of the earth, where I am now. I ran away, like a coward. And not yet a coward, for I loved Sally James, and I knew too much. I turned at the gate, and I gazed back at the windows of the house with their close-drawn blinds. I thought they looked like eyelids let down over anxious dreams. I saw the one window in the oldest part of the house where Sally, half-dressed, was peeping through the blind, annoyed, yet uncomplaining at my departure. She knew men. She thought I was just going to put my head under the pump and freshen my aching brain and my eyes that had looked on so much since they closed in sleep the night before. Then, after a walk over the common with my dog at my heels, I should return to her, stay with her through the long years to come, and profit by her crime. She had rid me of a nuisance. She didn't realize, how could she, being hard Sally James, that I couldn't bear the thought of seeing her face again. She was so careless of other people's feelings that she knew less of what I felt than the silly young dog who slunk at my heels, or the pert robin that perched on the cheek of the gatepost. The robin, with its head on one side, seemed to stare at me and leer horribly as I closed the gate behind me and went out into the world forever. I never meant to see Sally again. I never meant to write or receive a letter. I never meant to look at a newspaper again. I never meant to know if she were tried for murder or not. I only knew that I didn't mean to chance having to bear evidence against her. There was very little likelihood of that. Mrs. James, the bouncing, jolly widow and my secret love, had saved money left her by her late husband, and had managed to buy the freehold of Dewlap Hall, an old manor house that had seen better days. It had been one of the homes of the Conyers family, but was now little more than a forlorn, dejected farmhouse, standing alone in a couple of acres about 3 miles out of Durham. It looked even a better place than it was. Once you were inside, you saw that its ruin was only a question of time. It was slowly crumbling, festering, powdering away. Half the rooms were unsafe. The walls of the others were shored up, partitioned off, reduced to a fourth of their original size. One floor was taken bodily away, I have been told, to lay the ghost. The sharp, jagged rafters sagged downward from the sides. The floor of this room was cobbled. It had lancet windows. People said it was the old chapel. Sally used the place as a wash house. It opened out of her kitchen, which was the old and only hall of the first house. That, Mr. Wilson, the vicar, had told us, was built in the time of Edward II. Of course the house was haunted. The Grey Lady. Sally's bedroom, above, must have been taken off the whole top of the hall. The floor was very bad, and although originally it must have been a handsome-sized, airy and pleasant room in spite of the low ceiling, the late owner had mistrusted the eastern portion of it so much that he had walled it off with boards and some concrete, calmly reducing the best bedroom to a cell about 10 feet square. It was big enough for 2 people, for Sally and me, drunk with love. I believe Sally and I would have made love if we'd been fastened in a barrel studded with nails and rolled down to the sea. but not room enough for 3. On that night, Sally and I, absorbed in each other, hadn't heard the heavy drunkard's footfall of my wife on the creaking steps of the staircase that led up from the house place below, and the sound of the door of the room where we were being slowly pushed open. The heavy bolt that should by rights have gone across it was lying on the wicker chair by the bed. Sally, in her wild confidence in the impossibility of molestation in this lonely part of the country, had omitted to run it into the thole holes on either side of the lintels, as usual. When you did that, you made the chamber into a real castle of strength, but she had forgotten all but me. And poor mad Mary, my wife, stood like the ghost of Dewlap Hall and watched us. Sally, half dazed, may have thought she was the ghost. Anyway, she struck out with the heavy iron bar that lay ready to her hand. She was strong. Hardly another woman could have wielded it. My dog Roger looked up from where he slept, crouched on my coat at the foot of the bed on Sally's packing box. The iron bar was immensely weighty. My poor old wife fell like a log. Roger turned up his eyes. I said, "Down, Roger," and Roger lay down. Though a mere puppy, he was well trained. Sally dropped the bar with a loud clang on the floor. There was nobody below to hear it. It lay there till, seeing my eyes fixed on it, she picked it up easily and replaced it on the chair without even looking at it. But there was no blood or even hairs on it, I could have told her, for I had got hold of Mary by that time and felt her, and I was perfectly sure that she had been stunned, killed outright. So far as I could see, the skin wasn't even broken. Her clumsy straw hat was, of course, smashed, battered in, and her very thick black hair lay like a mat over the crown of her head. Sally asked me if she were dead, and I answered, yes, stone dead. Sally shrugged her shoulders, as who should say, it's fate. Then, without blinking, she put a petticoat on over her nightgown and drew the strings of it tightly round her waist till I should have thought they would have cut her, but I expect she didn't feel much at that particular moment. At least, I didn't. I kept my eyes on her all the time. I thought it might prevent me from going mad. And Sally was sure to know what to do. It was her murder. It was a very warm night, and getting on for 2 o'clock, I should have thought, but no light pierced through the pieces of red gingham that Sally had hung up and gathered into a curtain for the window. I watched Sally. She came up to me and took hold of Mary's feet, and then dropped them again after I had taken the corpse by the shoulders. She stood a moment, a bit mazed, and then she thought of the bar and went to where it lay on the chair by the bedside. She lifted it and examined its iron surface. "Give it to me," I said. I stupidly thought of burning it. "Nonsense," Sally said, quite sharply, wiping it on her nightgown and replacing it on the chair. "Let it stay there where it always lies. Old Betty is used to the sight of it." She was wise. She returned to me and my burden. She took hold of Mary's feet again and didn't drop them this time, but tied a towel around her ankles, thus binding them firmly together. Then, both of us breathing heavily, we got the body down the stairs. I went first. I couldn't see Mary's face, but I saw Sally's, and her lips were red and tightly primmed. Roger, clumsily trying to pass us and our burden on the narrow flight of steps, got under our feet and nearly threw us down, and she unclosed her lips to swear at him. If she had not spoken, I believe I should have dropped. We laid Mary on the stone-flagged kitchen floor while Sally fumbled with the latch of the wash-house. There was a door out of that into the backyard, and thence into a little orchard, and out of that into the wood which stretched away toward Finchell Priory at the back of the house to the north. It was conveniently full of old abandoned pit shafts. I knew that well enough. But it wasn't until we gained the door of the wash-house that it occurred to me what Sally meant to do, and had meant to do from the moment we first lifted Mary to bring her downstairs. There was a little more light now, but still it wasn't light enough to see, and I hoped it wouldn't be until we got into the shelter of the woods. Sally held the feet as before. She swung a lantern by a string from her teeth. She had refused to let me carry it. Sally hadn't much faith in me in the best of times, and now, when so much depended on it, I could see she meant to see to everything herself. Roger followed us. He was very humble and submissive since Sally had spoken to him so roughly. She swore again, but not at him, for he kept out of her way. It was when the long brambles caught the hem of her nightgown that hung below the petticoat. Her eyes flashed a little now and then in the light of the swinging lantern. "I can hardly walk. Got the bloody hem of my shift so wet," she said roughly. "Can you manage?" I asked, speaking very faint. She had said bloody. "Yes. Good thing it's dew, not blood after all," she reassured me. "Don't talk. I've no breath for talking. My word, I sweat, no mistake." I didn't want to talk. I was thinking of Mary, slung between us, dead as dead. And the last time I saw her, she was dead drunk in the streets of Cardiff, reeling about, carrying on her trade. There was no need. That was the shame and the disgrace. I was earning good wages at Neath as a collieryman and gave her fair share. But she'd always taken too much and never been respectable, not even when I married her. They say those two things go together, and luckily there were no children. As soon as I found out what she was up to, I left her, deserted her, people would say, and drifted to Durham. That was full 2 years ago. How did she find out that I had come to Durham and was working at the elephant pit? I never wrote to her once. How did she know I was living with Sally James in her house 3 miles out of Durham? How had she tracked me? I couldn't tell then, and I don't know now. I was wondering, and the undergrowth grew thick, and the nut boughs lashed my cheek in the dark. I stumbled a little as we got along with that between us, and I forgot to keep step with Sally, and she swore at me for an awkward fool that was giving her, a weak woman, all the work to do. We came at last to the old pit shaft Sally and I knew of, for it had been one of our trysting places in her husband's lifetime. Most of these disused shafts are walled round with brick, but this one wasn't, for some reason or other. It was carelessly staked around with wattle, waiting to be done properly, I suppose. A drunken man could easily fall in, and no one be any the wiser. For a pit shaft is so deep you can see the stars in the daylight. Mary must have walked all the way from Cardiff. It was the first time I felt sorry for her. I had been till then so angry with her for coming, ferreting and spying, that if he had asked me, I should have said I was glad she got her deserts. But I couldn't help seeing the worn soles of her shoes as we heaved her over the edge of the hole, and they were fairly walked through. I felt sorry for her then. Mary was gone, without sticking or any awkwardness, and Sally breathed hard. She put out her hand and fondled Roger. "Good dog," she said. "He never barked. He won't tell tales of us, will he, pet?" Roger licked her hand as an answer to her question. He was, even at that age, a wonderfully bright, intelligent dog. Then Sally stooped and tried to pick the long bramble trail out of the hem of her nightgown. It resisted. It was hopelessly entangled. "Stand on it," she said, "while I walk on a bit. One can always get rid of followers that way." She alluded to the old superstition that a girl who attracts the wild wood tendrils will always have plenty of sweethearts. Her white feet were quite bare. I never knew a hardier woman than Sally. She looked down into the shaft once, though of course there was nothing to see. It was too dark and deep down. Then she turned around sharp and decided. "Best get back to bed now," she said cheerfully. "There's a good piece of night left. I'm sure we both need a rest." I caught her up in my arms and carried her home. It was only a little bit of a way, no distance at all, though coming out it had seemed so terribly long. She liked being carried. Once she put up her mouth and kissed me. I took her in and set her down in the middle of the house place. She tottered a little, like a china ornament when you've been shifting it. She turned to go upstairs again. I couldn't manage it. "Sally," I said, "I think I'll go and get a wash." "Do," she said, "and you can draw yourself some cider. There's plenty in that barrel in the corner there." I watched her ascend the stairs, rather heavily. Then I whistled my dog. The door of the house stood open. The dawn was just breaking. I latched it carefully behind me and went away down the garden path. I looked back once, only once. Then I took my resolve definitely. I have never seen her since. I secured a passage out west, and we sailed, my poor dog and I, the very next day. And, in my panic, I've never looked at a paper from that day to this. I don't know whether there was an inquiry or not, or whether any suspicion fell on Sally. I should say not, she's too clever. Of one thing I'm quite sure, the body was never found. They never are when they're lost like that. I have an idea, too, that my wife Mary was never even missed in Cardiff. Who cares when prostitutes die or disappear? If, as was probable, no one had chanced to see her approach Dewlap Hall in the early hours in the morning, then there was absolutely no witness of Sally's crime, except myself and my dog Roger. Yet, the thought that plagued me all through that night passes through my mind, and worries me still. I had deserted Mary. I had not seen or communicated with her or any of my old friends in and near Cardiff, I'm a Welshman, for 3 years. So how did she know where to find me? Did she settle to visit all the great mining centers in turn? And did she draw Durham early in the game? And when she got to Durham, how did she get wind of my living at Dewlap with Sally James? My thoughts for the last 7 years have not been pleasant, but they're all the company I've had. I've worked hard here. I've even had a bit of luck and been able to lay by a little, but I've hardly spoken to a single soul. The last man who spent a night in my cabin was a taciturn Japanese who had less conversation than even Roger. It is killing me. That is why 2 nights ago I took up my pen and wrote to Sally. Mrs. James, Dewlap Hall, near Durham, England. I must see her again. And today I have managed somehow or other to mail the letter. Now I wait. I waited a good month. Then there came an answer I had ridden in for to Blizzardville every other day all through the time, speaking to no one except the clerk at the window of the post office, an uncommon dull and slow dog he was. She wrote, "You wretch! What a surprise to hear from you. Have you returned to your senses? I congratulate you. Your letter seems to mean that you have, and I don't mind saying how glad I am. Oh, George, how could you walk off like that, and I lying there expecting you to come back after you'd had a wash and a drink to buck you up? Men always feel these things so much more than women at the time. As for me, you'd be surprised to hear it, but sometimes at nights I'd feel as much remorse as you would have me. Only then, when the good daylight comes in at the pane, I feel so different one wouldn't believe it was the same woman. Morning thoughts always are more cheerful. You see, I can't forgive her for coming to dig me and you out in our happiness. She had nothing more to do with you. She drank, she sold herself, she got what she deserved, even if it was me that gave it to her. I saw it all as I lifted that great bar. She came meddling, and like all meddlesome fools, she got what for. If you had considered it yourself for one moment, you never would have left me like that. But now you've thought it over, and you've thought better of it, and you're coming back to me. Come, only come. All is serene, as I dare say you know. Nobody bothered. William Dysart fooled about me a little when you left the field free, but I treated him with a high hand, and I am shot of him, except for a lowering look he gives me over the top of his pew in church on Sunday. They say he is my enemy, but even he can't see to the bottom of a pit shaft, and there's no evidence. I am respected in the place, and I can marry anyone I please and when I please. Shan't it be you, George? Aren't you and I bound by the memory of that night and what I did to get you? Come, your own wicked, level-headed Sally. P.S. I suppose the dog Roger, who was a puppy then, has died a natural death? Poor old dear. I was jealous of that dog. I always felt you liked him nearly as well as you liked me. Peace be to his bones. Roger looked up at me as I looked down his way when I came to that last piece all about him. I believe I read it aloud softly. I am in the habit of talking to Roger. He knows perfectly well what one says to him. I stroked him. "Dead? Not a bit of it, old dog," I said. "We are all alive and kicking, aren't we? Very well preserved. Eyes a little bleary, perhaps. Not many teeth in our head, but those sound, and that's half the battle." Roger fawned on me. He is a quiet, taciturn creature, like his master, and I verily believe the sound of his own voice has got to scare him almost as much as mine does me. "You'll come to England with me, old dog, won't you? You and me'll never be parted. She must take us both, for better or worse, eh?" Roger's tail wagged. He said nothing, but of course he understood. I could not have left him, even if I'd wanted to die alone in a strange country. Besides, he knows all about me. He saw it all. I can still see him looking pensively down into the pit shaft after. He is my only confidant, for of course I never let on to anyone. I could never risk giving Sally away. But a dog? Yes, I'm glad he knows. I could not get ready to leave for about a week, and before I started I got another letter from Sally. It must have been written not much more than a day after the first letter, and there seemed no particular reason why she should ever have written it. It was rather incoherent. The thought of our meeting again must have troubled her, must have a little turned her head. She mixed up all sorts of things in her letters and mentioned Roger again 3 or 4 times in connection with William Dysart, who she seems to fancy has got his knife into her. A despised lover, but still. I began to fear that the sight of my dog would distress her, remind her of that awful night when suddenly and without thought or premeditation she up and did a sin for me. What was I to do? It was but woman's nonsense at the best, and I couldn't leave my faithful beast to pine and starve because of a woman's whim. I consoled myself with the reflection that a hard, sensible woman, such as Sally had proved herself to be, would not allow any mere fancy to affect her for long. She would force herself to get over it, and ignore it as she had the other. I settled it the way I wanted to, and took Roger with me. I made one tiresome discovery on the way home. I was pretty deaf and could hear very ill unless the speaker addressed himself especially to me, a general conversation not at all. This saddened me. Even a slight deafness makes a man such a nuisance, and I thought it might put Sally off or even set her willful mightiness against me. Sally was never very patient at the best of times. You see, I thought of everything in relation to her. Her crime and her heartlessness and want of feeling with regard to it seemed not to affect my appreciation of her in any way. Indeed, I admired her devil-may-carishness because it was on the whole the most decent way for her to behave. I should have hated her to whine and snivel. I walked out from Durham one fine Sunday morning in May, Roger trotting at my heels. I had asked no questions about Sally and her circumstances. I knew from her letter that she was well, and moreover I experienced some difficulty in framing questions, or indeed in getting into conversation at all. I don't believe I spoke more than 2 consecutive sentences all the way back, and those I mumbled in my beard for all the world as if I were tongue-tied. No one bothered about me, and I expect I was singularly unattractive, and for the most part I was left severely alone. I had lost all convivial habits. I didn't care to see or hear anything. I never looked at a paper. My one idea was to see Sally again. Roger was not so unsociable. Indeed, my trouble with him was that he was the reverse. He seemed to be continually getting into conversations and eventually into fights with other dogs. One dog, a sandy, weedy terrier, lame of one leg, that we met as soon as we got out at Durham Station, he seemed, after having fought handsomely with, to take a great fancy to, and the wretched and lame cur chose to follow us all the way out to Dewlap Hall. It was disturbing, and I should have preferred to have kept my faithful dog entirely to myself at a moment like this. I was going to meet the woman I loved again after all these years, and only Roger knew what had been. It was Sunday morning, and I heard bells ringing at the different churches all the way out. Sally was standing in the clear morning light at the low door of her house close to the monthly rose bush which stood as high as she did. There was but 1 rose on it. She wore a pink cotton dress. She had grown a little stouter. She held her hand straight across her forehead against the sun which came into her eyes and made her frown. Or was it the sight of me? For indeed, her black eyebrows were cruelly drawn down as Roger and I and Roger's friend came up the flagged path. But all she said was, as she took her hand away from her face and laid it in mine, "Come in." She pulled me inside and shut the door in Roger's face. He set up a whine. "Poor Roger," I said, in spite of myself and my wish not to annoy her. "Don't you remember him?" "Yes, but why did you bring the wretched creature here? I thought he was dead. I understood you to say so." She stood there, quaking, quivering with anger. I had never seen Sally so unmanned. "Never mind the dog, Sally. Kiss me." She kissed me. Then she said thoughtfully, "Perhaps, on the whole, I had better have him in." She opened the door and drove away the stranger dog. Roger she seized, hauling him in by the collar. She then carefully bolted the door with one hand, sticking to Roger with the other. "Have you got a chain?" "What for, Sally?" "To chain him up. I can't have him loose. He's been talking to that mongrel of Dysart's. I know the malicious beast, and when dogs get talking together. Now—" "Talking? My dear Sally." "Oh, you know what I mean. It was William Dysart who directed Mary here that night, or rather morning. He's longing to get his knife into me, or you." "But was there an inquiry? I didn't read any of the papers. I was so afraid of what I might see there. You understand." She looked at me narrowly, then she tossed her head. "Silly fellow. There's nothing to make you uneasy. There wasn't a word of gossip. No one knew. There was one woman less on the streets of Cardiff, that's all." "But you said William Dysart directed her here?" "Yes, that came out in a roundabout way. But he didn't know who she was, or that she didn't just come here and go straight back again where she came from. If only you had taken my hint." "What hint?" "About Roger." "You do puzzle me, Sally. You only said you supposed he was dead. Well, he isn't, that's all, and mighty glad I am of it. And he isn't used to being tied up, and I'm not going to put upon the old dog now." "I can't help it. He doesn't go free in my house. We must talk it over. Meantime—" She left me abruptly. Sally never dawdled, not even over a murder. Trailing Roger helplessly by the collar, she went into the wash-house next door. I followed her, grumbling a little, but still quite her humble slave. She made his collar more secure, and then tied him to the copper. Then she reached up to a high shelf and gave him a handsome plate full of bones and a pat on the head that had more of monition than kindness in it. Roger looked up at me. He seemed to understand the situation better than I did. "Keep in with her. Don't irritate her," he seemed to say. He shivered and seemed cold. "Tell him to be a good dog and behave himself," she said to me. "And he shall be loose tomorrow, if I can feel quite sure of him. Things are changed a bit, George, since you were here, and it is easy to see you have not kept pace with them. We must brush you up and bring you up to date." She was very nervous. I followed her out of the wash-house, closing the door behind me as she bade me over her shoulder. In the living room, she turned and faced me. She was a very beautiful woman, was Sally James. Her white teeth showed keen as her short upper lip was drawn up from them. It made her look fine, but a bit cruel. She was not a very big woman, but stately, majestic even, at times, although she was only a farmer's widow and daughter. Just now, as she stood there, her arms at her side, her broad breast, covered with pink print, was like a queen's. She was holding herself in readiness for my first embrace, and I longed for it too, and yet I distrusted her. She was without principle, a figure of shifting sand. She would always do exactly as she liked, at the moment when she liked. And she hated my dog. I invented excuses for her. It's all association, I thought as I hung back. She's not so heartless as she seems. The dog was in the room when it happened and by the shaft when we heaved her over. He reminds her. She has some feeling. My distrust turned all at once to tenderness, and I sat down on the settle and took her in my arms. She was very soft and yielding, and she sat meekly on my knee and kissed me passionately again and again. Then I kissed her back just the same. The tall clock ticked as it did on that night, only louder. There didn't seem to be a soul about. I asked Sally if she had no servant to help her. "I've a woman, old Betty, do you remember her? Comes to help me all the week through, but she stays away on Sundays. The farmhands sleep nearly a quarter of a mile away. You'll stop tonight, George?" I said I would. In my heart, I wondered if her room was still the same, and if I could stand it. Part 2. A movement in the room awoke me. I opened my eyes slowly, and in the gray light I put out my hand and missed Sally. She had left my side. I put some clothes on and went down the little steep single stairs lit only by one dirty cobwebby window. The scanty twilight, for that was all it was as yet, slid in and onto the white lintels, cracked and seamed with age. I never liked the dawn when people die. The moon was paling quietly in the sky. The morning star still lingered there. At the corner where the stairs turned sharply, I looked down at my feet and remembered the job we had to get Mary past it. Drops of sweat broke out on my forehead just as they had done then. That and the dawn. I was very nervous. It was nearly the same as that other night. Sally was not in the house place. I stood, turning on my heels, and wondered where she was. I made no doubt that she was walking in her sleep, that seeing me had brought back all the sensations of that dreadful night and that she was repeating them. Perhaps she had remembered the light on the lintel, the turn of the stair too. What I feared was that she had gone wandering along the same dreary path through the wood as far as the shaft. And then, when she got there, suppose her remorse was too much for her and she were mad enough to throw herself over? Such things have happened. I had seen the bells in Macbeth. Sally was rather like Lady Macbeth, and Lady Macbeth, strong-minded as she was, rued her deed, and walked in her sleep, and rubbed her hands. Sally had no blood to think about, only dew on the hem of her nightgown that time. You couldn't tell blood from dew at night. I heard a click, something like the sound made by one earthenware pan rubbing against another in the wash-house. I had maligned Sally in my thoughts. She had merely gone downstairs to feed Roger. The last remark she had made in going to bed was that he looked weakly and on his last legs and should by rights be put away before he suffered pain. Dogs die so hard, she had said. I opened the door that led into the old stone-paved chapel Sally used as a wash-house and stood the beer casks in. Sally, in her plain nightgown, was standing there barefoot on the cobbled stones. She looked a bit cranky. Her black hair hung partly down her back and in elf locks that were curls overnight in her eyes. She had a great quantity of hair, and out of vanity she never took it all down when she went to bed, but half arranged it with pins and colored ribbons. Her arm was raised to a high shelf when she had taken Roger's provender earlier in the day. The movement made the fronts of her nightgown gape and show her breast. She started when I came in and dropped her arm guiltily. "Go away, go away!" she screamed and put her hand behind her back. "Go away and let me finish the job." "What job in heaven's name?" I cried. "At this hour of night? We saw to the dog. There's no need to feed him again." "Feed him, you idiot! Poison him, more likely. Anything to get him out of the way." I went up to her and laid my hand on her arm. "I do believe the sight of Roger, who saw you murder Mary, has put you clean out of your wits, Sally, my dear."
"And what about you and your wits bringing the beast here?"
She rushed at poor Roger, who squatted at the extreme length of his cord, staring at her calmly, boldly, as if inviting her to stick him with the knife she brandished. He was never like any other dog. He did not plunge or bark. I saved him. I took the knife out of her hand and flung it into a meal tub close by.
"Fool! Fool!" she yelled,
but I put my hand over her mouth and forced her back on the tub so that she sat on the knife. I was so sure she was going mad that it made me calm and strong, and I tried to soothe her and speak gently to her, as one does to an invalid. "What do you want to kill my poor old dog for, Sally?"
I must. He's dangerous."
"Dangerous without a sound tooth in his head?"
"He has a tongue in his head."
She looked at me narrowly, dragging down the outside corners of her eyelids like a bulldog. Then she pulled the fronts of her nightdress too and tried to speak reasonably. She succeeded more or less, but it was a great effort to her.
"Don't you know what has happened here while you have been away sulking at the other end of the world?"
I said nothing on purpose, so as not to put her back up. She stood staring at me, waiting for me to say something. I was so long she began to shake in the cold, and Sally never could keep quiet for long. Her temper broke out and she shouted at me,
"Don't look so stupid, George. God, it sends me mad."
"Dear, try and tell me quietly." I sat down on an empty barrel. "Come here, sit on my knee." She waved me away. She moistened her lips.
"Don't treat me like a child or a madwoman, George. It is serious, sober earnest. I am telling you facts, not lies. The police, damn them, have got a new weapon, and they use it for all it is worth."
She wrung her hands and walked up and down.
"Oh, to think that all this time we have made pets of these wretched animals and trusted them. I had a pet dog once. I put it away because it watched me, though I wasn't doing anything wrong. Yes, we used to let them go about with us and see all we did and listen to all we said. Who minded talking secrets with an animal in the room or doing anything one liked in a whole farmyard of beasts then? We didn't know that dog of yours was lying at the foot of the bed when Mary was done for. I never even thought of him. We actually let him go with us to the edge of the shaft and see us throw her in. God, what fools we were."
"But what can a dog do, you silly darling?"
"He can get us hanged. Get us both hanged. Why, your beast there, the very moment he got into England, he must have learnt his power. He must have blabbed our whole story, and to that animal of Dysart's, too, to the very last person."
I tried to soothe her. "Sally, my dear, it's awfully cold here. You're shivering. Do let us go back to bed." I said that, but indeed I was getting to be afraid of her, in bed or out of it. She took no notice of me, but went on.
"You never looked at a paper, you tell me, and yet they were full of it 2 years ago, the wonderful new discovery. Since then, I've never known a moment's peace. My life has been hell. You may thank your stars you were out of it and had left me to bear the whole brunt of it."
"For goodness sake, explain," I said crossly. She came quite close to me and whispered,
"The police. It's a new dodge of the police. I hate 'em and their filthy methods. They get a hold of animals, dogs preferred because they're more intelligent, and shut them down there in cellars behind locked doors, and then they torture them, rack them. George, can you bear the idea of Roger tortured, racked, kept without water for a week? Oh, if you had heard, as I have, scores of times, only I've run away and said nothing because of my guilty conscience. If you had heard the pitiful howls and whines at the back of the police station there, and knew that some poor helpless beast was being made to betray and give evidence." "But I don't see how a dog, or any animal indeed, could let on to what it knew even if it tried," I said, grave as a judge, to pacify her. "Oh, that's a mere matter of detail. The police have got a code. They manage to communicate with the beasts. They count the barks."
I laughed.
"Don't you dare to laugh, you ignorant fool. Have you never heard of those spiritualist affairs? The spirits rap and the medium tells you what they're saying. While the dog barks, it comes to the same thing.
She sighed deeply and seemed relieved. It was now quite day. Her candle flared. She was waiting for me to speak. I was thinking of what would be the most soothing thing to say. It would not come. I was at my wit's end. The only thing I could think of was to get her back to bed and send for a doctor. I moved slightly in my indecision. She caught my hand. Hers was very hot.
George, what are you going to do? I've explained clearly, haven't I?
Quite. I had now fixed on a plan of action. And now, Sally darling, I said softly, just you get back to bed, and I'll settle Roger, and then I'll bring you a nice cup of tea. That plan failed. She screamed and beat the air with her hands.
Settle him? Not you. It takes a man to do that, or a woman like me. No, I know you. You want me to go quietly while you untie the dog and let him go free to get us hanged. Me, at any rate. I murdered Mary. You only looked on. And your dog. What'll you get? I shall swing for it. He's sure to have told Dysart's dog, and the police will get wind of it. Dysart will take care of that. He's only waiting, has been these 10 years. And then they can houk Mary up, what's left of her, and the damn dog will tell them who put her there.
Do you suppose Roger would betray us? I said, humoring her. She was crying now, violently, against my heart.
But George, under torture, there's no knowing what he might do. Is there, Roger?
She left me, contemptuously, and bending down a little, spoke to Roger as if he were a human being. That gave me a turn, and I felt very queer. She seemed so sure of herself and her tale. Roger appeared to listen. He barked 3 times, then 4 times, then more. I lost count. But Sally didn't, apparently. She wiped her eyes on the sleeve of her nightgown, tossed her head back, and cried triumphantly, There! He says I'd better warn you. He can't be quite sure. He's not so young as he was. His power of endurance is weakened. That's what he says, as well as he can, to me who understand him. Did you notice, she continued, how Dysart's dog limps? Oh, that's because, everyone knows it, though it's supposed to be a secret, the police examined him, tormented, I call it, a year ago, in connection with a case of arson. Dysart's ricks were set on fire. She chuckled. Who was accused? Me. And did you? That's not the point. Dysart's dog was got to admit that he had seen one of my men loitering about at an awkward time, the time when it happened, in fact. The police couldn't make anything of his evidence. It was too scanty, luckily, but all the same he's gone lame ever since. I hate the police as I hate sin. Brutes they are. Roger, good dog, tell me, how did you learn the code in this short time? Roger barked gently, a little chain of barks. From Dysart's dog, he says. It's quite simple. Well, George, look here. No, I'm not cold when I'm interested. I'll go on getting it from Roger, and perhaps I'll be able to convince you that for his own sake Roger had better be put out of the way. He wishes it. I am convinced, I said. I was convinced that she was off her head on this particular point, and that a good rest would set her right. I put my arm round her and tried to kiss her and lead her away, but she pushed me off. Go and sit over there. Don't worry me. I want all my wits about me now, and once you see the danger, if you love me, you won't set the life of an old, toothless, worn-out dog against mine, for that's what it comes to. I do love you, Sally. Now, Roger, stand and deliver. Answer the lady. There was no good fighting hallucinations. It's best to humor them. Any doctor would have agreed with me that it was useless to argue with a woman so terribly excited as Sally was. There she stood, barefooted on the stone floor, in the light circle that the candle made, waving her arms and casting shadows of an awful length and shape. The black, jagged ends of the rafters of the broken flooring over her head framed her in spikes as they sagged and drooped towards the middle of the room where she was. Nice homecoming for a man after all these years. I wished then, how I wished I had stayed in Wyoming with my faithful Roger and only seen Sally as I remembered her, plucky, resolute and sensible, instead of the all-to-pieces madwoman remorse had made of her. But she was determined to go through with the mad farce. She stooped, tossed back her hair, and fixed Roger with her eyes. He met them, as dogs do, without flinching or turning away. Poor dear old Roger was so faithful and so old, I did wish she would leave him alone. But no.
"Roger," she said solemnly, "did Dysart's dog warn you of the state of things here and of what might happen to you?"
A lot of little orderly barks answered her. Though Roger always did bark when you spoke to him in a certain domineering tone, it was fairly horrible. Sally turned to me, and her voice was lifted with pride.
"He says yes, that he is fully informed. Moreover, Dysart's dog has told him that his master has had suspicions of you ever since a certain tramp woman he met on the Witten-Gilbert Road was so keen on finding her way to you. William Dysart told her she would probably find you in bed with me, blast and curse him. I'm glad I burnt 5 of his ricks."
Come, Sally, does my dog really say all of that?" I mocked her.
"He says that and a lot more. That Dysart went straight to the police this morning after seeing you and your dog walk across the marketplace. Now then."
"Damn it all, that's where Roger picked up the cur first," I called out, for I own this struck me. And the dog's manner was disquieting. All this was exciting and very bad for him. He shivered and whined very low. Roger, old man." I caressed him and talked to him as if he was human and sensible, as indeed he was, but only as dogs, the best of them, are. "Don't take on so. What is it? What's the matter?"
"He'll tell you fast enough,"
Sally said, grinning. She went up to him, too, and passed her hands over his back.
"Come, tell us all about it, good dog."
I couldn't bear to see her lay her Judas hand on him. I shouted, "Don't you touch my dog, you—" I couldn't find a word bad enough for her, not even one of the worst. All my love for her had gone, melted away.
"All right,"
she answered carelessly, desisting. So we both stood at an equal distance from Roger, who barked incessantly for about 5 minutes. I thought I noticed gaps between the groups of barks, as it were, but even now I cannot be quite sure. Sally had got me into the same state as the dog. We were both beside ourselves, fairly bewitched, I think. Now Sally translated in a level voice. Her quiet was more awful than her bluster.
"He says, 'Master, save me from the torture. I am old. I have not many months to live. Shoot me first. I may not be able to stop myself from betraying you and her. Shoot me in mercy. Shoot me.'"
"Is that so, Roger?" I asked him. The spell wrought on me so that I began to believe it. "Do you want me to kill you?" He barked. Yes, he barked horribly. Then I turned on Sally, and she held up her head and looked at me with insolence in the face, and the dog began to plunge and strain on the cord, barking furiously all the time. "You devil!" I yelled. "You are taking me in. This is all a plan got up to make me put away my faithful old dog."
"Look at your dog," she said calmly. "He has more sense than you. Do you know what he is trying to do? He's trying to commit suicide. He says it's his only chance if you won't shoot him. You coward! Afraid to put him out of his misery and help him to get out of the way before he's forced to betray you? Go and get your gun. Kill him, man, or let me."
I came out of my maze just in time. I saw Sally whip the knife out from under her and go for Roger with it. The dog had nearly succeeded in strangling himself. He had come to make gurgling noises in his throat, but I was all there now. "Don't you do it, old dog!" I up and shouted. "I'll settle her as she settled Mary." And that is why I am sitting here in Durham jail, waiting to be hanged, and a good riddance, too. I don't care to live. Poor Roger did manage to commit suicide. He knew.
I tell you, sir, I was innocent. I didn't know any more about the world at 22 than some do at 12. My uncle and aunt in Duxbury brought me up strict. I studied hard in high school, I worked hard after hours, and I went to church twice on Sundays, and I can't see it's right to put me in a place like this with crazy people. Yes, I know they're crazy. You can't tell me. And as for what they said in court about finding her with her husband, that's the inspector's lie, sir, because he's down on me and wants to make it look like my fault. No, sir, I can't say as I thought she was handsome, not at first. For one thing, her lips were too thin and white, and her color was bad. I'll tell you for a fact, sir, that first day I came off to the light, I was sitting in my cot in the storeroom, that's where the assistant keeper sleeps at the Seven Brothers, as lonesome as I could be, away from home for the first time, and the water all around me, and even though it was a calm day, pounding enough on the ledge to send a kind of whoom, 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 winding up through all the solid rock of the tower. And when old Fedderson poked his head down from the living room with the sunshine above making a kind of bright frame around his hair and his whiskers to give me a cheery, "Make yourself to home, son," I remember I said to myself, he's all right. I'll get along with him. But his wife's enough to sour milk. That was queer, because she was so much under him in age, long about 28 or so, and him nearer 50. But that's what I said, sir. Of course that feeling wore off, same as any feeling will wear off sooner or later in a place like the Seven Brothers. Cooped up in a place like that, you come to know folks so well that you forget what they do look like. There was a long time I never noticed her, any more than you noticed the cat. We used to sit of an evening around the table, as if you were Fedderson there, and me here, and her somewhere back there in the rocker, knitting. Fedderson would be working on his Jacob's ladder, and I'd be reading. He'd been working on that Jacob's ladder a year, I guess, and every time the inspector came off with the tender, he was so astonished to see how good that ladder was that the old man would go to work and make it better. That's all he lived for. If I was reading, as I say, I daren't take my eyes off the book, or Fedderson had me. And then he'd begin. What the inspector said about him, how surprised the members of the board had been that time to see everything so clean about the light, what the inspector had said about Fedderson's being stuck here in a second-class light, best keeper on the coast, and so on and so on and so on, till either he or I had to go aloft and have a look at the wicks. He'd been there 23 years, all told, and he'd got used to that feeling that he was kept down unfair. So used to it, I guess, that he'd fed on it, and told himself how folks ashore would talk when he was dead and gone, best keeper on the coast, kept down unfair. And not that he said that to me. Nah, he was far too loyal and humble and respectful, doing his duty without complaint, as anybody could see. And all that time, night after night, hardly ever a word out of the woman. As I remember it, she seemed more like a piece of furniture than anything else, not even a very good cook, nor over and above tidy. One day, when he and I were trimming the lamp, he passed the remark that his first wife used to dust the lens and take a pride in it. Not that he had a word against Anna, though. He never said a word against any living mortal. He was too upright. I don't know how it came about. Or rather, I do know, but it was so sudden and so far away from my thoughts that it shocked me, like the world turned over. It was at prayers. That night, I remember, Fedderson was uncommon long-winded. We'd had a batch of newspapers out by the tender, and such times the old man always made a long watch of it, getting the world straightened out. For one thing, the United States minister to Turkey was dead. Well, from him and his soul, Fedderson got on to Turkey and the Presbyterian College there, and from that to heathen in general, and he rambled on and on like the surf on the ledge, woom, 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 never coming to an end. And you know how you'll be at prayers sometimes. My mind strayed. I counted the canes in the chair seat where I was kneeling. I played at the corner of the tablecloth between my fingers for a spell, and by my eyes went wandering up the back of the chair. The woman, sir, was looking at me. Her chair was back to mine, close, and both our heads were down there by the shadow under the edge of the table, with Fedderson clear over on the other side by the stove, and there were her 2 eyes hunting mine between the spindles in the shadow. You won't believe me, sir, but I tell you I felt like jumping to my feet and running out of the room. It was so queer. I don't know what her husband was praying about after that.
His voice didn't mean anything, no more than the seas on the ledge away down there. I went to work to count the canes in the seat again, but all my eyes were in the top of my head. It got so I couldn't stand it. We were at the Lord's Prayer, saying it sing-song together when I had to look up again, and there her 2 eyes were between the spindles, hunting mine, and just then all of us were saying, "Forgive us our trespasses." I thought of it afterward. When we got up, she was turned the other way, but I couldn't help seeing her cheeks were red. It was terrible. I wondered if Fedderson would notice, though I might have known he wouldn't, not him. He was in too much of a hurry to get at his Jacob's ladder, and then he had to tell me for the 10th time what the inspector had said that day about getting him another light. Kingdom come, maybe, he said. I made some excuse or another and got away. Once in the storeroom, I sat down on my cot and I stayed there a long time, feeling queerer than anything. I read a chapter in the Bible, I don't know why. After I got my boots off, I sat with them in my hands for as much as an hour, I guess, staring at the oil tank and its lopsided shadow on the wall. I tell you, sir, I was shocked. I was only 22, remember, and I was shocked and horrified. And when I did turn in, finally, I didn't sleep at all well. 2 or 3 times I came to, sitting straight up in bed. Once I got up and opened the outer door to have a look. The water was like glass, dim, without a breath of wind, and the moon just going down. Over on the black shore I made out 2 lights in a village, like a pair of eyes watching. Lonely? My, yes, lonely and nervous. I had a horror of her, sir. The dinghy boat hung on its davits just there in front of the door, and for a minute I had an awful hankering to just climb into it, lower away, and row off, no matter where. It sounds foolish. Well, it seemed foolish next morning, with the sun shining and everything as usual, Fedderson sucking his pen and wagging his head over his eternal log, and his wife down in the rocker with her head in the newspaper and her breakfast work still waiting. I guess that jarred it out of me more than anything else, sight of her slouched down there, with her stringy yellow hair and her dusty apron and the pale back of her neck, reading the society notes. Society notes. Think of it. For the first time since I came to Seven Brothers, I wanted to laugh. I guess I did laugh when I went aloft to clean the lamp and found everything so free and breezy, gulls flying high and little white caps making under a westerly. It was like feeling a big load dropped off your shoulders. Fedderson came up with his dust rag and cocked his head at me. "What's the matter, Ray?" said he. "Nothing," said I. And then I couldn't help it. "Seems kind of out of place for society notes," said I. "Out here at Seven Brothers." He was the other side of the lens, and when he looked at me, he had 1,000 eyes. All sober. For a minute I thought he was going on dusting, but then he came out and he sat down on a sill. "Sometimes," said he, "I get to thinking it may be a mite dull for her out here. She's pretty young, Ray. Not much more'n a girl, hardly." "Not much more'n a girl?" It gave me a turn, sir, as though I'd seen my aunt in short dresses. "It's a good home for her, though," he went on, slow. "I've seen a lot worse ashore, Ray. Of course, if I could get a shore light—" "Kingdom come's a shore light." He looked at me out of his deep-set eyes, and then he turned them around the light room where he'd been so long. "Nah," said he, wagging his head. "It ain't for such as me. I never saw so humble a man. But look here," he went on, more cheerful. "As I was telling her just now, a month from yesterday is our 4th anniversary, and I'm going to take her ashore for the day and give her a holiday, new hat and everything. A girl wants a mite of excitement now and then, Ray." There it was again, that girl. It gave me the fidgets, sir. I had to do something about it. It's close quarters for last name and a light, and I'd take to calling him Uncle Matt soon after I came. Now, when I was at table that noon, I spoke over to where she was standing by the stove, getting him another help of chowder. "I guess I'll have some too, Aunt Anna," said I, matter of fact. She never said a word nor gave a sign, just stood there kind of round-shouldered, dipping the chowder. And that night at prayers I hitched my chair around the table with its back the other way. You get awful lazy in a lighthouse some ways. No matter how much tinkering you've got, there's still a lot of time, and there's such a thing as too much reading. The changes in weather get monotonous too by and by. The light burns the same on a thick night as it does on a fair one. Of course, there's the ships, northbound, southbound, windjammers, freighters, passenger boats full of people. In the watches at night you can see their lights go by and wonder what they are, how they're laden, where they'll fetch up and all. I used to do that almost every evening when it was my first watch, sitting out on the walk-around up there with my legs hanging over the edge and my chin propped on the railing. Lazy. The Boston boat was the prettiest to see, with her 3 tiers of portholes lit like a string of pearls wrapped around and round a woman's neck. Well away, too, for the ledge must have made a couple 100 fathoms off the light, like a white dog tooth of a breaker, even on the darkest night. Well, I was lolling there one night, as I say, watching the Boston boat go by, not thinking of anything special, when I heard the door on the other side of the tower open and footsteps coming around to me. By and by I nodded toward the boat and passed the remark that she was fetching in uncommon close tonight. No answer. I made nothing of that, for oftentimes Fedderson wouldn't answer, and after I'd watched the lights crawling through the darkest spell, just to make conversation, I said I'd guessed there'd be a bit of weather before long. I've noticed, said I, that when there's weather coming on, and the wind in the northeast, you can hear the orchestra playing aboard of her just over there. I make it out now. Do you? Yes. Oh, yes. I hear it all right. You can imagine, I started. It wasn't him, but her. And there was something in the way she said that speech, sir, something, well, unnatural, like a hungry animal snapping at a person's hand. I turned and looked at her sidewise. She was standing by the railing, leaning a little outward, the top of her from the waist picked out bright by the lens behind her. I didn't know what in the world to say, and yet I had a feeling I ought not to sit there mum. I wonder, said I, what that captain's thinking of, fetching in so handy tonight. It's no way, I tell you. 'Twasn't for this light she'd go to work and pile up the ledge some thick night. She turned at that and stared straight into the lens. I didn't like the look of her face. Somehow, with its edges cut hard all around and its 2 eyes closed down to slits like a cat's, it made a kind of mask. And then, I went on, uneasy enough, and then where'd all their music be of a sudden, and their goings-on, and their singing, and dancing? She clipped me off so quick it took my breath. Dancing? Said I. That's dance music, said she. She was looking at the boat again. How do you know? I felt I had to keep on talking. Well, sir, she laughed. I looked at her. She had on a shawl of some stuff or other that shined in the light. She had it pulled tight around her with her 2 hands in front at her breast, and I saw her shoulders swaying in tune. How do I know? She cried. Then she laughed again, the same kind of laugh. It was queer, sir, to see her and to hear her. She turned, quick as that, and leaned toward me. Don't you know how to dance, Ray? Said she. No, I managed, and I was going to say Aunt Anna, but the thing choked in my throat. I tell you, she was looking square at me all the time, with her 2 eyes, and moving with the music as if she didn't know it. By heaven, sir, it came over me all of a sudden that she wasn't so bad looking after all. I guess I must have sounded like a fool. You see, said I. She's cleared the rip there now, and the music's gone. You hear? Yes, said she, turning back slow. That's where it stops every night. Night after night. It stops just there, at the rip. When she spoke again, her voice was different. I'd never heard the like of it, thin and taut as a thread. It made me shiver, sir. I hate 'em, that's what she said. I hate 'em all. I'd like to see 'em dead. I'd love to see 'em torn apart on the rocks night after night. I could bathe my hands in their blood night after night. And do you know, sir, I saw it with my own eyes, her hands moving in each other above the rail. But it was her voice, though. I didn't know what to do or what to say, so I poked my head through the railing and looked down at the water. I don't think I'm a coward, sir, but it was like a cold, ice-cold hand taking hold of my beating heart. When I looked up finally, she was gone. By and by I went in and had a look at the lamp, hardly knowing what I was about. Then, seeing by my watch it was time for the old man to come on duty, I started to go below. In the Seven Brothers, you understand, the stair goes down in a spiral through a well against the south wall, and first there's the door to the keeper's room, and then you come to another, and that's the living room, and then down to the storeroom, and at night, if you don't carry a lantern, it's as black as the pit. Well, down I went, sliding my hand along the rail, and as usual I stopped to give a rap on the keeper's door in case he was taking a nap after supper. Sometimes he did. I stood there, blind as a bat, with my mind still up on the walk-around. There was no answer to my knock. I hadn't expected any. Just from habit, and with my right foot already hanging down for the next step, I reached out to give the door one more tap for luck. Do you know, sir, my hand didn't fetch up on anything. The door had been there a second before, and now the door wasn't there. My hand just went on going through the dark, on, and I didn't seem to have sense or power enough to stop it. There didn't seem any air in the well to breathe, and my ears were drumming to the surf. That's how scared I was, and my hand touched the flesh of a face, and something in the dark said, "Oh," no louder than a sigh. Next thing I knew, sir, I was down in the living room, warm and yellow lit, with Fedderson cocking his head at me across the table where he was at that eternal Jacob's ladder of his. "What's the matter, Ray?" said he. "Lord's sake, Ray!" "Nothing," said I. Then I think I told him I was sick. That night I wrote a letter to A.L. Peters, the grain dealer in Duxbury, asking for a job. Even though it wouldn't go ashore for a couple of weeks, just the writing of it made me feel better. It's hard to tell you how those 2 weeks went by. I don't know why, but I felt like hiding in a corner all the time. I had to come to meals, but I didn't look at her, though not once, unless it was by accident. Fedderson thought I was still ailing and nagged me to death with advice and so on. One thing I took care not to do, I can tell you, and that was to knock on his door till I'd made certain he wasn't below in the living room, though I was tempted to. Yes, sir, that's a queer thing, and I wouldn't tell you if I hadn't set out to give you the truth. Night after night, stopping there on the landing in that black pit, the air gone out of my lungs and the surf drumming in my ears and the sweat standing cold on my neck and one hand lifting up in the air. God forgive me, sir. Maybe I did wrong not to look at her more, drooping about her work in her gingham apron with her hair stringing. When the inspector came off with the tender that time, I told him I was through. That's when he took the dislike to me, I guess, for he looked me kind of sneering and said, soft as I was, I'd have to put up with it till next relief. And then, said he, there'd be a whole house cleaning at Seven Brothers because he'd gotten Fedderson the berth at Kingdom Come, and with that he slapped the old man on the back. I wish you could have seen Fedderson, sir. He sat down on my cot as if his knees had given way. Happy? You'd think he'd be happy with all his dreams come true. Yes, he was happy, beaming all over. For a minute. Then, sir, he began to shrivel up. It was like seeing a man cut down in his prime before your eyes. He began to wag his head. No, said he. No, it's not for such as me. I'm good enough for Seven Brothers, and that's all, Mr. Bayliss. That's all. And for all the inspector could say, that's what he stuck to. He'd figured himself a martyr so many years, nursed that injustice like a mother with her firstborn, sir, and now in his old age, so to speak, they weren't to rob him of it. Fedderson was going to wear out his life in a second-class light, and folks would talk. That was his idea. I heard him hailing down as the tender was casting off. See you tomorrow, Mr. Bayliss. Yep, coming ashore with the wife for a spree. Anniversary. Yep. But he didn't sound much like a spree. They had robbed him, partly, after all. I wondered what she thought about it. I didn't know till night. She didn't show up to supper, which Fedderson and I got ourselves. Had a headache, he said. It was my early watch. I went and lit up and came back to read a spell. He was finishing off the Jacob's ladder and thoughtful, like a man that's lost a treasure. Once or twice I caught him looking about the room on the sly. It was pathetic, sir. Going up the second time, I stepped out on the walk-around to have a look at things. She was there, on the seaward side, wrapped in that silky thing. A fair sea was running across the ledge, and it was coming on a little thick, not too thick. Off to the right, the Boston boat was blowing woom, woom, creeping up on us, quarter speed. There was another fellow behind her in a fisherman's conch further ashore. I don't know why, but I stopped beside her and leaned on the rail. She didn't appear to notice me one way or another. We stood and we stood, listening to the whistles, and the longer we stood, the more it got on my nerves, her not noticing me. I suppose she'd been too much on my mind lately. I began to be put out. I scraped my feet. I coughed. By and by I said out loud, "Look here, I guess I better get the foghorn and give these fellas a toot." "Why?" said she, without moving her head, calm as that. "Why?" It gave me a turn, sir. For a minute I stared at her. "Why? Because if she don't pick up this light before very many minutes, she'll be too close in to wear. Tide'll have her on the rocks, that's why." I couldn't see her face, but I could see one of her silk shoulders lift a little, like a shrug. And there I kept on staring at her, a dumb one, sure enough. And I know what brought me to was hearing the Boston boat's 3 sharp toots as she picked up the light, mad as anything, and swung her helm a port. I turned away from her, sweat stringing down my face, and walked around to the door. It was just as well, too, for the feed pipe was plugged in the lamp and the wicks were popping. She'd have been out in another 5 minutes, sir. When I'd finished, I saw that woman standing in the doorway. Her eyes were bright. I had a horror of her, sir, a living horror. "If only the light had been out," said she, low and sweet. "God forgive you," said I. "You don't know what you're saying." She went down the stair into the well, winding out of sight, and as long as I could see her, her eyes were watching mine. When I went myself, after a few minutes, she was waiting for me on that first landing, standing still in the dark. She took hold of my hand, though I tried to get it away. "Goodbye," said she in my ear. "Goodbye," said I. I didn't understand. "You heard what he said today, about kingdom come? Be it so, on his own head. I'll never come back here. Once I set foot ashore, I've got friends in Brightonboro, Ray." I got away from her and I started on down, but I stopped. "Brightonboro?" I whispered back. "Why do you tell me?" My throat was raw to the words, like a sore. "So you'd know," said she. "Well, sir, I saw 'em off the next morning, down that new Jacob's ladder into the dinghy boat, her in a dress of blue velvet and him in his best cutaway and derby, rowing away, smaller and smaller, the two of them. And then I went back and sat on my cot, leaving the door open and the ladder still hanging down the wall, along with the boatfalls. I don't know whether it was relief or what. I suppose I must have been worked up even more than I'd thought those past weeks, for now it was all over, I was like a rag. I got down on my knees, sir, and prayed to God for the salvation of my soul, and when I got up and climbed to the living room, it was 12:30 by the clock. There was rain on the windows, and the sea was running blue-black under the sun. I'd sat there all that time, not knowing there was a squall. It was funny. The glass stood high, but those black squalls kept coming and going all afternoon while I was at work up in the light room. And I worked hard to keep myself busy. First thing I knew, it was 5 and no sign of the boat yet. It began to get dim and kind of purplish gray over the land. The sun was down. I lit up, made everything snug, and got out the night glasses to have another look for that boat. He'd said he intended to get back before 5. No sign. And then standing there, it came over me that of course he wouldn't be coming off. He'd be hunting her, poor old fool. Looked like I had to stand 2 men's watches that night. Never mind. I felt like myself again, even if I hadn't had any dinner or supper. Pride came to me that night on the walk around, watching the boats go by. Little boats, big boats, the Boston boat with all her pearls and her dance music. They couldn't see me. They didn't know who I was, but to the last of them they depended on me. They say a man must be born again. Well, I was born again. I breathed deep in the wind. Dawn broke, hard and red as a dying coal. I put out the light and started to go below. Born again, yes, sir. I felt so good I whistled in the well, and when I came to that first door in the stair, I reached out in the dark to give it a rap for luck, and then, sir, the hair prickled all over my scalp when I found my hand just going on and on through the air, the same as it had gone once before, and all of a sudden I wanted to yell because I thought I was going to touch flesh. It's funny what their just forgetting to close their door did to me, isn't it? Well, I reached for the latch, and I pulled it to with a bang and ran down as if a ghost was after me. I got up some coffee and bread and bacon for breakfast. I drank the coffee, but somehow I couldn't eat all along of that open door. The light in the room was blood. I got to thinking. I thought how she'd talked about those men, women, and children on the rocks, and how she'd made to bathe her hands over the rail. I almost jumped out of my chair then. It seemed for a wink she was there beside the stove watching me with that queer half-smile. Really, I seemed to see her for a flash across the red tablecloth in the red light of dawn. "Look here," said I to myself, sharp enough, and then I gave myself a good laugh and went below. And there I took a look out of the door, which was still open with the ladder hanging down. I made sure to see the poor old fool come pulling around the point before very long now. My boots were hurting a little, and taking them off, I lay down on the cot to rest, and somehow I went to sleep. I had horrible dreams. I saw her standing again in that blood-red kitchen, and she seemed to be washing her hands, and the surf on the ledge was winding up the tower louder and louder all the time, and what it whined was night after night, night after night. What woke me was cold water in my face. The storeroom was in gloom. That scared me at first. I thought night had come and remembered the light. But then I saw the gloom was of a storm. The floor was shining wet, and the water in my face was spray flung up through the open door. When I ran to close it, it almost made me dizzy to see the gray and white breakers marching past. The land was gone, the sky shut down heavy overhead, there was a piece of wreckage on the back of a swell, and the Jacob's ladder was carried clean away. How that sea had picked up so quick, I can't think. I looked at my watch, and it wasn't 4 p.m. yet. When I closed the door, sir, it was almost dark in the storeroom. I'd never been in the light before in a gale of wind. I wondered why I was shivering so, till I found it was the floor below me shivering, and the walls, and the stair. Horrible crunchings and grindings ran away up the tower, and now and then there was a great thud somewhere, like a cannon shot in a cave. I tell you, sir, I was alone, and I was in a mortal fright for a minute or so. And yet I had to get myself together. There was the light up there not tended to, and an early dark coming on, and a heavy night and all, and I had to go, and I had to pass that door. You'll say it's foolish, sir, and maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was because I hadn't eaten. But I began thinking of that door up there the minute I set foot on the stair, and all the way up through that howling dark well I dreaded to pass it. I told myself I wouldn't stop. I didn't stop. I felt the landing underfoot, and I went on 4 steps, 5, and then I couldn't. I turned and went back. I put out my hand, and it went on into nothing. That door, sir, was open again. I left it be. I went on up into the light room and set to work. It was bedlam there, sir, screeching bedlam, but I took no notice. I kept my eyes down. I trimmed those 7 wicks, sir, as neat as ever they were trimmed. I polished the brass till it shone, and I dusted the lens. It wasn't till that was done that I let myself look back to see who was standing there, half out of sight in the well. It was her, sir. "Where'd you come from?" I asked. I remember my voice was sharp. "Up Jacob's ladder," said she, and hers was like the syrup of flowers. I shook my head. I was savage, sir. "The ladder's carried away." "I cast it off," said she with a smile. "Then," said I, "you must have come while I was asleep." Another thought came on me heavy as a ton of lead. "And where's he?" said I. "Where's the boat?" "He's drowned," said she. "As easy as that. And I let the boat go adrift. You wouldn't hear me when I called." "But look here," said I. "If you came through the storeroom, why didn't you wake me up? Tell me that. It sounds foolish enough, me standing like a lawyer in court, trying to prove she couldn't be there." She didn't answer for a moment. I guess she sighed, though I couldn't hear for the gale, and her eyes grew soft, sir, so soft. "I couldn't," said she. "You looked so peaceful, dear one." My cheeks and neck went hot, sir, as if a warm iron was laid on them. I didn't know what to say. I began to stammer. What do you mean?" But she was going back down the stair, out of sight. My God, sir, and I used to not think she was good-looking. I started to follow her. I wanted to know what she meant. Then I said to myself, if I don't go, if I wait here, she'll come back. And I went to the weather side, and I stood looking out of the window. Not that there was much to see. It was growing dark, and the 7 brothers looked like the mane of a running horse, a great, vast white horse running into the wind. The air was a welter with it. I caught one peep of a fisherman lying down flat trying to weather the ledge, and I said, God help them all tonight. And then I went hot at sound of that. God. I was right about her, though. She was back again. I wanted her to speak first before I turned, but she wouldn't. I didn't hear her go out. I didn't know what she was up to till I saw her coming outside the walk-around, drenched wet already. I pounded on the glass for her to come in and not be a fool, but if she heard me, she gave no sign of it. There she stood. And there I stood watching her. Lord, sir, was it just that I'd never had eyes to see? Or are there women who bloom? Her clothes were shining on her like a carving, and her hair was let down like a golden curtain tossing and streaming in the gale, and there she stood with her lips half open, drinking, and her eyes half closed, gazing straight away over the 7 brothers, and her shoulders swaying as if in tune with the wind and water and all the ruin. And when I looked at her hands over the rails, sir, they were moving in each other as if they bathed, and then I remembered, sir. A cold horror took me. I knew now why she had come back again. She wasn't a woman. She was a devil. I turned my back on her. I said to myself, it's time to light up. You've got to light up, like that, over and over, out loud. My hand was shivering so I could hardly find a match, and when I scratched it only flared a second and then went out at the backdraft from the open door. She was standing in the doorway, looking at me. It's queer, sir, but I felt like a child caught in mischief. I was going to light up, I managed to say, finally. Why? Said she. No, I can't say it as she did. Why? Said I. My God! She came nearer, laughing, as if with pity, low, you know. Your God? And who is your God? What is God? What is anything on a night like this? I drew back from her. All I could say anything about was the light. Why not the dark? Said she. Dark is softer than light, tenderer, dearer than light. From the dark up here, away up here in the wind and the storm, we can watch the ships go by, you and I. And you love me so. You've loved me so long, Ray. I never have, I struck out at her. I don't. Her voice was lower than ever, but there was the same laughing pity in it. Oh, yes, you have. And she was near me again. I have? I yelled. I'll show you if I have. I got another match, sir, and scratched it on the brass. I gave it to the first wick, that little wick that's inside all the others. It bloomed like a yellow flower. I have? I yelled, and I gave it to the next. And then there was a shadow, and I saw she was kneeling beside me, her 2 elbows on the brass, and her 2 arms stretched out above the wicks, her bare forearms and wrists and hands. I gave a gasp. Take care! You'll burn them! For God's sake! She didn't move or speak. The match burned my fingers and went out, and all I could do was stare at those arms of her, helpless. I'd never noticed her arms before. They were rounded and graceful and covered with soft down like a breath of gold. Then I heard her speaking close to my ear. Pretty arms, she said. Pretty arms. I turned. Her eyes were fixed on mine. They seemed heavy, as if with sleep, and yet between their lids there were 2 wells, deep and deep, and as if they held all the things I'd ever thought or dreamed in them. I looked away from them at her lips. Her lips were red as poppies, heavy with redness. They moved, and I heard them speaking. Poor boy, you love me so, and you want to kiss me, don't you? No, said I, but I couldn't turn around. I looked at her hair. I'd always thought it was stringy hair. Some hair curls naturally with damp, they say, and perhaps that was it, for there were pearls of wet on it, and it was thick and shimmering around her face, making soft shadows by the temples. There was green in it, queer strands of green like braids.
What is it? Said I. Nothing but weed, said she, with that slow, sleepy smile. Somehow or other, I felt calmer than I had any time. Look here, said I. I'm going to light this lamp. I took out a match, scratched it, and touched the third wick. The flame ran round, bigger than the other two together, but still her arms hung there. I bit my lip. By God, I will, said I to myself, and I lit the fourth. It was fierce, sir, fierce, and yet those arms never trembled. I had to look around at her. Her eyes were still looking into mine, so deep, and her red lips were still smiling with that queer, sleepy droop. The only thing was that tears were raining down her cheeks, big, glowing, round, jeweled tears. It wasn't human, sir. It was like a dream. Pretty arms, she sighed. And then, as if those words had broken something in her heart, there came a great sob bursting from her lips. To hear it drove me mad. I reached to drag her away, but she was too quick, sir. She cringed from me and slipped down from between my hands. It was like she faded away and went down in a bundle, nursing her poor arms and mourning over them with these terrible, broken sobs. The sound of them took the manhood out of me. You'd have been the same, sir. I knelt down beside her on the floor and covered my face. Please, I moaned. Please, please. That's all I could say. I wanted her to forgive me. I reached out a hand, blind for forgiveness, and I couldn't find her anywhere. I had hurt her so, and she was afraid of me, sir. Me, who loved her so deep it drove her crazy. I could see her down the stair, though it was dim and my eyes were filled with tears. I stumbled after her, crying, please, please. The little wicks I'd lit were blowing in the wind from the door and smoke in the glass behind the black. One went out. I pleaded with them the same as I would plead with a human being. I said I'd be back in a second. I promised. And I went down the stair crying like a baby because I'd hurt her and she was afraid of me, sir. She had gone into her room. The door was closed against me and I could hear her sobbing beyond it, broken-hearted. My heart was broken too. I beat on the door with my palms. I begged her to forgive me. I told her I loved her, and all the answer was that sobbing in the dark. And then I lifted the latch and went in, groping, pleading, dearest, please, because I love you. I heard her speak down near the floor. There wasn't any anger in her voice, nothing but sadness and despair. No, said she. You don't love me, Ray. You never have. I do. I have. No, said she, as if she was tired out. Where are you? I was groping for her. I thought and lit a match. She had got to the door and she was standing there as if ready to fly. I went toward her and she made me stop. She took my breath away. I hurt your arms, said I, in a dream. No, said she, hardly moving her lips. She held them out to the match's light for me to look, and there was never a scar on them, not even that soft golden down was singed, sir. You can't hurt my body, said she, sad as anything. Only my heart, Ray, my poor heart. I tell you again, she took my breath away. I lit another match. How can you be so beautiful, I wondered. She answered in riddles, but oh, the sadness of her, sir. Because, said she, I've always wanted so to be. How come your eyes so heavy, said I. Because I've seen so many things I never dreamed of, said she. How come your hair so thick? It's the seaweed makes it thick, said she, smiling queer. How come seaweed there? Out of the bottom of the sea. She talked in riddles, but it was like poetry to hear her, or a song. How come your lips so red, said I. Because they've wanted so long to be kissed. Fire was on me, sir.
I reached out to catch her, but she was gone, out of the door and down the stair. I followed, stumbling. I must have tripped on the turn, for I remember going through the air and fetching up with a crash, and I didn't know anything for a spell. How long, I can't say. When I came to, she was there somewhere, bending over me, croning, my love, under her breath like a song. But then when I got up, she was not where my arms went. She was down the stair again, just ahead of me. I followed her. I was tottering and dizzy and full of pain. I tried to catch up with her in the darkness of the storeroom, but she was too quick for me, sir. Always a little too quick for me. Oh, she was cruel to me, sir. I kept bumping against things, hurting myself still worse, and it was cold and wet and a horrible noise all the while, and then, sir, I found the door was open and a sea had parted the hinges. I don't know how it all went, sir, I'd tell you if I could, but it's all so blurred. Sometimes it seems more like a dream. I couldn't find her anymore. I couldn't hear her. I went all over, everywhere. Once, I remember, I found myself hanging out of that door between the davits, looking down into that big black sea and crying like a baby. It's all riddles and blur. I can't seem to tell you much, sir. It was all, I don't know. I was talking to somebody else, not her. It was the inspector. I hardly knew it was the inspector. His face was as gray as a blanket, and his eyes were bloodshot, and his lips were twisted. His left wrist hung down, awkward. It was broken, coming aboard the light in that sea. Yes, we were in the living room. Yes, sir, it was daylight, gray daylight. I tell you, sir, the man looked crazy to me. He was waving his goat arm toward the weather windows, and what he was saying over and over was this: "Look what you've done, damn you! Look what you've done!" And what I was saying was this: "I've lost her." I didn't pay any attention to him, nor him to me. By and by he did, though. He stopped talking all of a sudden, and his eyes looked like the devil's eyes. He put them up close to mine. He grabbed my arm with his good hand, and I cried. I was so weak. "Johnson," said he, "is that it? By the living God, if you got a woman out here, Johnson?" "No," said I. "I've lost her." "What do you mean, lost her?" "It was dark," said I, "and it's funny how my head was clearing up. And the door was open, the storeroom door, and I was after her, and I guess she stumbled maybe, and I lost her." "Johnson," said he, "what do you mean? You sound crazy, downright crazy. Who?" "Her," I said. "Fedderson's wife." "Who?" "Her," said I. And with that he gave my arm another jerk. "Listen," said he, like a tiger. "Don't try that on me. It won't do any good. That kind of lies, not where you're going to. Fedderson and his wife, too, both of 'em drowned deader'n a doornail." "I know," said I, nodding my head. I was so calm it made him wild. "You're crazy. Crazy as a loon, Johnson." And he was chewing his lip red. "I know, because it was me that found the old man lying on Blackwater Flats yesterday morning. Me. And she'd been with him in that boat, too, because he had a piece of her jacket tore off, tangled in his arm." "I know," said I, nodding again like that. "You know what, you crazy murdering fool?" Those were his words to me, sir. "I know," said I, "what I know." "And I know," said he, "what I know." And there you are, sir. He's inspector. I'm nobody. Part 1. The children were always called Blue Eyes and the Turkey, and they came by the names in this manner. The elder one was like her dear father, who was far away at sea, and when the mother looked up she would often say, "Child, you have taken the pattern of your father's eyes," for the father had the bluest of blue eyes, and so gradually his little girl came to be called after them. The younger one had once, while she was still almost a baby, cried bitterly because a turkey that lived near to the cottage and sometimes wandered into the forest suddenly vanished in the middle of the winter, and, to console her, she had been called by its name. Now, the mother and Blue Eyes and the turkey and the baby all lived in a little lonely cottage at the edge of the forest. The forest was so near that the garden at the back seemed a part of it, and the tall fir trees were so close that their big black arms stretched over the little thatched roof, and when the moon shone upon them their tangled shadows were all over the whitewashed walls. It was a long way to the village, nearly a mile and a half, and the mother had to work hard and had not time to go often herself to see if there was a letter at the post office from the dear father. And so, very often in the afternoon, she used to send the two children. They were very proud of being able to go alone, and often ran half the way to the post office. When they came back, tired with the long walk, there would be the mother waiting and watching for them, and the tea would be ready, and the baby crowing with delight. And if by any chance there was a letter from the sea, then they were happy indeed. The cottage room was so cozy, the walls were as white as snow inside as well as out, and against them hung the cake tin and the baking dish and the lid of a large saucepan that had been worn out long before the children could remember, and the fish slice, all polished and shining as bright as silver. On one side of the fireplace, above the bellows, hung the almanac, and on the other the clock that always struck the wrong hour and was always running down too soon. But it was a good clock, with a little picture on its face, and sometimes ticked away for nearly a week without stopping. The baby's high chair stood in one corner, and in another there was a cupboard hung up high against the wall, in which the mother kept all manner of little surprises. The children often wondered how the things that came out of that cupboard had got into it, for they seldom saw them put there. "Dear children," the mother said one afternoon late in the autumn, "it is very chilly for you to go to the village, but you must walk quickly, and who knows but what you may bring back a letter saying that dear father is already on his way to England." Then Blue Eyes and the turkey made haste and were soon ready to go. "Don't be long," the mother said, as she always did before they started. "Go the nearest way, and don't look at any strangers you meet, and be sure you do not talk with them." "No, mother," they answered. And then she kissed them and called them dear good children, and they joyfully started on their way. The village was gayer than usual, for there had been a fair the day before, and the people who had made merry still hung about the street, as if reluctant to own that their holiday was over. "I wish we had come yesterday," Blue Eyes said to the turkey. "Then we might have seen something." "Look there," said the turkey, and she pointed to a stall covered with gingerbread, but the children had no money. At the end of the street, close to the Blue Lion, where the coaches stopped, an old man sat on the ground with his back resting against the wall of a house, and by him, with smart collars round their necks, were two dogs. Evidently they were dancing dogs, the children thought, and longed to see them perform, but they seemed as tired as their master, and sat quite still beside him, looking as if they had not even a single wag left in their tails. "Oh, I do wish we had been here yesterday," Blue Eyes said again as they went on to the grocer's, which was also the post office. The postmistress was very busy weighing out half-pounds of coffee, and when she had time to attend to the children, she only just said, "No letter for you today," and went on with what she was doing. Then Blue Eyes and the turkey turned away to go home. They went back slowly down the village street, past the man with the dogs again. One dog had roused himself and sat up rather crookedly, with his head a good deal on one side, looking very melancholy and rather ridiculous. But on the children went toward the bridge and the fields that led to the forest. They had left the village and walked some way, and then, just before they reached the bridge, they noticed, resting against a pile of stones by the wayside, a strange dark figure. At first they thought it was someone asleep, and then they thought it was a poor woman ill and hungry, and then they saw it was a strange, wild-looking girl who seemed very unhappy, and they felt sure that something was the matter. So they went and looked at her, and thought they would ask her if they could do anything to help her, for they were kind children, and sorry indeed for anyone in distress. The girl seemed to be tall, and was about 15 years old. She was dressed in very ragged clothes. Round her shoulders there was an old brown shawl, which was torn at the corner that hung down the middle of her back. She wore no bonnet, and an old yellow handkerchief which she had tied around her head had fallen backwards and was all huddled up around her neck. Her hair was coal black and hung down uncombed and unfastened just anyhow. It was not very long, but it was very shiny and seemed to match her bright black eyes and dark freckled skin. On her feet were coarse gray stockings and thick, shabby boots, which she had evidently forgotten to lace up. She had something hidden away under her shawl, but the children did not know what it was. At first they thought it was a baby, but when, on seeing them coming towards her, she carefully put it under her and sat upon it, they thought they must be mistaken. She sat watching the children approach and did not move nor stir till they were within a yard of her. Then she wiped her eyes, just as if she had been crying bitterly, and looked up. The children stood still in front of her for a moment, staring at her and wondering what they ought to do. "Are you crying?" they asked shyly. To their surprise, she said in a most cheerful voice, "Oh, dear no, quite the contrary. Are you?" They thought it rather rude of her to reply in this way, for anyone could see they were not crying. They felt half in mind to walk away, but the girl looked at them so hard with her big black eyes they did not like to do so till they had said something else. "Perhaps you have lost yourself?" they said gently. But the girl answered promptly, "Certainly not. Why, you have just found me. Besides," she added, "I live in the village." The children were surprised at this, for they had never seen her before, and yet they thought they knew all the village folk by sight. "We often go to the village," they said, thinking it might interest her. "Indeed," she answered. That was all, and again they wondered what to do. Then the turkey, who had an inquiring mind, put a good, straightforward question. "What are you sitting on?" she asked. "On a pear drum," the girl answered, still speaking in a most cheerful voice, at which the children wondered, for she looked very cold and uncomfortable. "What is a pear drum?" they asked. "I'm surprised at your not knowing," the girl answered. "Most people in good society have one." And then she pulled it out and showed it to them. It was a curious instrument, a good deal like a guitar in shape. It had 3 strings, but only 2 pegs by which to tune them. The 3rd string was never tuned at all, and thus added to the singular effect produced by the village girl's music. And yet, oddly, the pear drum was not played by touching its strings, but by turning a little handle cunningly hidden on one side. But the strange thing about the pear drum was not the music it made, or the strings, or the handle, but a little square box attached to one side. The box had a little flat lid that appeared to open by a spring. That was all the children could make out at first. They were most anxious to see inside the box, or to know what it contained, but they thought it might look curious to say so. "It really is a most beautiful thing, is a pear drum," the girl said, looking at it, and speaking in a voice that was almost affectionate. "Where did you get it?" the children asked. "I bought it," the girl answered. "Didn't it cost a great deal of money?" they asked. "Yes," answered the girl slowly, nodding her head. "It cost a great deal of money. I am very rich," she added. And this the children thought a really remarkable statement, for they had not supposed that rich people dressed in old clothes or went about without bonnets. She might at least have done her hair, they thought, but they didn't like to say so. "You don't look rich," they said slowly, and in as polite a voice as possible. "Perhaps not," the girl answered cheerfully. At this the children gathered courage and ventured to remark, "You look rather shabby." They did not like to say ragged. "Indeed," said the girl in the voice of one who had heard a pleasant but surprising statement. "A little shabbiness is very respectable," she added in a satisfied voice. "I must really tell them this," she continued, and the children wondered what she meant. She opened the little box by the side of the pear drum and said, just as if she were speaking to someone who could hear her, "They say I look rather shabby. It is quite lucky, isn't it?" not speaking to anyone," they said, more surprised than ever. "Oh dear, yes, I am speaking to them both." "Both?" they said, wondering. "Yes. I have here a little man dressed as a peasant and wearing a wide slouch hat with a large feather, and a little woman to match, dressed in a red petticoat and a white handkerchief pinned across her bosom. I put them on the lid of the box, and when I play they dance most beautifully. The little man takes off his hat and waves it in the air, and the little woman holds up her petticoat a little bit on one side with one hand, and with the other she sends forward a kiss." "Oh, let us see, let us see!" the children cried, both at once. Then the village girl looked at them doubtfully. "Let you see?" she said slowly. "Well, I'm not sure that I can. Tell me, are you good?" "Yes, yes," they answered eagerly. "We are very good." "Then it's quite impossible," she answered, and resolutely closed the lid of the box. They stared at her in astonishment. "But we are good," they cried, thinking she must have misunderstood them. "We are very good. Mother always says we are." "So you remarked before," the girl said, speaking in a tone of decision. Still the children did not understand. "Then you can't let us see the little man and woman?" they asked. "Oh dear, no," the girl answered. "I only show them to naughty children." "To naughty children?" they exclaimed. "Yes, to naughty children," she answered. "And the worse the children, the better do the man and woman dance." She put the pear drum carefully under her ragged cloak and prepared to go on her way. "I really could not have believed that you were good," she said reproachfully, as if they had accused themselves of some great crime. "Well, good day." "Oh, but do show us the little man and woman," they cried. "Certainly not. Good day," she said again. "Oh, but we will be naughty," they said in despair. "I'm afraid you couldn't," she answered, shaking her head. "It requires a great deal of skill, especially to be naughty well. Good day," she said for the third time. "Perhaps I shall see you in the village tomorrow." And swiftly she walked away, while the children felt their eyes fill with tears and their hearts ache with disappointment. "If we had only been naughty," they said, "we should have seen them dance. We should have seen the little woman holding her red petticoat in her hand, and the little man waving his hat. Oh, what shall we do to make her let us see them?" "Suppose," said the turkey, "we try to be naughty today. Perhaps she would let us see them tomorrow." "But oh," said Blue Eyes, "I don't know how to be naughty. No one ever taught me." The turkey thought for a few minutes in silence. "I think I can be naughty if I try," she said. "I'll try tonight." Then poor Blue Eyes burst into tears. "Oh, don't be naughty without me," she cried. "It would be so unkind of you. You know I want to see the little man and woman just as much as you do. You are very, very unkind." And she sobbed bitterly. And so, quarreling and crying, they reached their home. Now, when their mother saw them, she was greatly astonished, and, fearing they were hurt, ran to meet them. "Oh, my children! Oh, my dear, dear children!" she said. "What is the matter?" But they did not dare tell their mother about the village girl and the little man and woman, so they answered, "Nothing is the matter. Nothing at all is the matter," and cried all the more. "But why are you crying?" she asked in surprise. "Surely we may cry if we like," they sobbed. "We are very fond of crying." "Poor children," the mother said to herself. "They are tired, and perhaps they are hungry. After tea they will be better." And she went back to the cottage and made the fire blaze until its reflection danced about on the tin lids upon the wall. And she put the kettle on to boil and set the tea things on the table and opened the window to let in the sweet fresh air and made all things look bright. Then she went to the little cupboard hung high up against the wall and took out some bread and put it on the table and said in a loving voice, "Dear little children, come and have your tea. It is all quite ready for you. And see, there is the baby waking up from her sleep. We will put her in the high chair, and she will crow at us while we eat." But the children made no answer to the dear mother. They only stood still by the window and said nothing. "Come, children," the mother said again. "Come, Blue Eyes, and come, my turkey. Here is nice sweet bread for tea." Then Blue Eyes and the turkey looked around, and when they saw the tall loaf baked crisp and brown, and the little cups all in a row, and the jug of milk all waiting for them, they went to the table and sat down and felt a little happier. And the mother did not put the baby in the high chair after all, but took it on her knee and danced it up and down, and sang little snatches of songs to it, and laughed and looked content, and thought of the father far away at sea, and wondered what he would say to them when he came home again. Then suddenly she looked up and saw that the turkey's eyes were full of tears. "Turkey!" she exclaimed. "My dear little turkey, what is the matter? Come to mother, my sweet, come to own mother." And putting the baby down on the rug, she held out her arms, and the turkey, getting up from her chair, ran swiftly into them. "Oh, mother," she sobbed. "Oh, dear mother, I do so want to be naughty." "My dear child," the mother exclaimed. "Yes, mother," the child sobbed more and more bitterly. "I do so want to be very, very naughty." And then Blue Eyes left her chair also, and, rubbing her face against the mother's shoulder, cried sadly, "And so do I, mother. Oh, I'd give anything to be very, very naughty." "But, my dear children," said the mother in astonishment, "why do you want to be naughty?" "Because we do. Oh, what shall we do?" they cried together. "I should be very angry if you were naughty, but you could not be, for you love me," the mother answered. "Why couldn't we be naughty because we love you?" they asked. "Because it would make me very unhappy, and if you love me, you couldn't make me unhappy." "Why couldn't we?" they asked. Then the mother thought a while before she answered, and when she did so they hardly understood, perhaps because she seemed to be speaking rather to herself than to them. "Because if one loves well," she said gently, "one's love is stronger than all the bad feelings in one and conquers them. And this is the test whether love be real or false. Unkindness and wickedness have no power over it." "We don't know what you mean," they cried. "And we do love you, but we want to be naughty." "Then I should know you did not love me," the mother said. "And what should you do?" asked Blue Eyes. "I cannot tell. I should try to make you better." "But if you couldn't? If we were very, very, very naughty and wouldn't be good, what then?" "Then," said the mother sadly, and while she spoke her eyes filled with tears, and a sob almost choked her. "Then," she said, "I should have to go away and leave you, and to send home a new mother with glass eyes and wooden tail." "You couldn't!" they cried. "Yes, I could," she answered in a low voice, "but it would make me very unhappy, and I will never do it unless you are very, very naughty, and I am obliged." "We won't be naughty," they cried. "We will be good. We should hate a new mother, and she shall never come here." And they clung to their own mother and kissed her fondly. But when they went to bed, they sobbed bitterly, for they remembered the little man and woman, and longed more than ever to see them. But how could they bear to let their own mother go away, and a new one take her place? Part 2. "Good day," said the village girl when she saw Blue Eyes and the turkey approach. She was again sitting by the heap of stones, and under her shawl the pear drum was hidden. She looked just as if she had not moved since the day before. "Good day," she said, in the same cheerful voice in which she had spoken yesterday. "The weather is really charming." "Are the little man and woman there?" the children asked, taking no notice of her remark. "Yes, thank you for inquiring after them," the girl answered. "They are both here and quite well. The little man is learning how to rattle the money in his pocket, and the little woman has heard a secret. She tells it while she dances." "Oh, do let us see," they entreated. "Quite impossible, I assure you," the girl answered promptly. "You see, you are good." "Oh," said Blue Eyes sadly, "but Mother says if we are naughty, she will go away and send home a new mother with glass eyes and a wooden tail." "Indeed," said the girl, still speaking in the same unconcerned voice. "That is what they all say." "What do you mean?" asked the turkey. "They all threaten that kind of thing. Of course, there really are no mothers with glass eyes and wooden tails. They would be much too expensive to make." And the common sense of this remark the children, especially the turkey, saw at once, but they merely said, half crying, "We think you might let us see the little man and woman dance." "The kind of thing you would think," remarked the village girl. "But will you if we are naughty?" they asked in despair. "I fear you could not be naughty, that is, really, even if you tried," the girl said scornfully. "Oh, but we will try, we will indeed," they cried. "Do so show them to us." "Certainly not beforehand," answered the girl, getting up and preparing to walk away. "But if we are very naughty tonight, will you let us see them tomorrow?" "Questions asked today are always best answered tomorrow," the girl said, and turned round as if to walk on. "Good day," she said blithely. "I really must go and play a little to myself. Good day," she repeated, and then suddenly she began to sing. "Oh, sweet and fair's the lady bird, and so's the bumblebee, but I myself have long preferred the gentle chimpanzee, the gentle chimpanzee, the gentle "I beg your pardon," she said, stopping and looking over her shoulder. "It's very rude to sing without leave before company. I won't do it again." "Oh, do go on," the children said. "I'm going," she said, and walked away. "No, we meant go on singing," they explained. "And do just let us hear you play," they entreated, remembering that as yet they had not yet heard a single sound from the pear drum. "Quite impossible," she called out as she went along. "You are good, as I remarked before. The pleasures of goodness centers in itself. The pleasures of naughtiness are many and varied. Good day," she shouted, for she was almost out of hearing. For a few minutes the children stood looking after her. Then they broke down and cried. "She might have let us see them," they sobbed. The turkey was the first to wipe away her tears. "Let us go home and be very naughty," she said. "Then perhaps she will let us see them tomorrow." "But what shall we do?" asked Blue Eyes, looking up. Then together all the way home they planned how to begin being naughty. And that afternoon the dear mother was sorely distressed, for, instead of sitting at their tea as usual with smiling happy faces, and then helping her to clear away and doing all she told them, they broke their mugs and threw their bread and butter on the floor, and when the mother told them to do one thing, they carefully went and did another, and as for helping her to put away, they left her to do it all by herself, and only stamped their feet with rage when she told them to go upstairs until they were good. "We won't be good," they cried. "We hate being good, and we always mean to be naughty. We like being naughty very much." "Do you remember what I told you I should do if you were very, very naughty?" she asked sadly. "Yes, we know, but it isn't true," they cried. "There is no mother with a wooden tail and glass eyes, and if there was, we should just stick pins into her and send her away. But there is none." Then the mother became really angry at last and sent them off to bed. But instead of crying and being sorry at her anger, they laughed for joy, and when they were in bed they sat up and sang merry songs at the top of their voices. The next morning, quite early, without asking leave from the mother, the children got up and ran off as fast as they could over the fields towards the bridge to look for the village girl. She was sitting as usual by the heap of stones with the pear drum under her shawl. "Now please show us the little man and woman," they cried, "and let us hear the pear drum. We were very naughty last night." But the girl kept the pear drum carefully hidden. "We were very naughty," the children cried again. "Indeed," she said, in precisely the same tone in which she had spoken yesterday. "But we were," they repeated. "We were indeed." "So you say," she answered. "You were not half naughty enough." "Why, we were sent to bed." "Just so," said the girl, putting the other corner of the shawl over the pear drum. "If you had been really naughty, you wouldn't have gone. But you can't help it, you see. As I remarked before, it requires a great deal of skill to be naughty well." But we broke our mugs. We threw our bread and butter on the floor. We did everything we could to be tiresome." "Mere trifles," answered the village girl scornfully. "Did you throw cold water on the fire? Did you break the clock? Did you pull all the tins down from the walls and throw them on the floor?" "No," exclaimed the children, aghast. "We did not do that." "I thought not," the girl answered. "So many people mistake a little noise and foolishness for real naughtiness, but, as I remarked before, it wants skill to do the thing properly. Well, good day." And before they could say another word, she had vanished. "We'll be much worse," the children cried in despair. "We'll go and do all the things she says." And then they went home and did all those things. They threw water on the fire. They pulled down the baking dish and the cake tin, the fish slice and the lid of the saucepan they had never seen, and banged them on the floor. They broke the clock and danced on the butter. They turned everything upside down, and then they sat still and wondered if they were naughty enough. And when Mother saw all that they had done, she did not scold them as she had the day before or send them to bed, but she just broke down and cried and looked at the children and said sadly, "Unless you are good tomorrow, my poor blue eyes and turkey, I shall indeed have to go away and come back no more, and the new mother I told you of will come to you." They did not believe her, yet their hearts ached when they saw how unhappy she looked, and they thought within themselves that when they once had seen the little man and woman dance, they would be good to the dear mother forever afterwards. But they could not be good now till they had heard the sound of the pear drum, seen the little man and woman dance, and heard the secret told. Then they would be satisfied. The next morning, before the birds were stirring, before the sun had climbed high enough to look in at their bedroom window, or the flowers had wiped their eyes ready for the day, the children got up and crept out of the cottage and ran across the fields. They did not think the village girl would be up so very early, but their hearts had ached so much at the sight of the mother's sad face that they had not been able to sleep, and they longed to know if they had been naughty enough, and if they might just once hear the pear drum and see the little man and woman, and then go home and be good forever. To their surprise, they found the village girl sitting by the heap of stones, just as if it were her natural home. They ran fast when they saw her, and they noticed that the box containing the little man and woman was open, but she closed it quickly when she saw them, and they heard the clicking of the spring that kept it fast. "We have been very naughty," they cried. "We have done all the things you told us. Now, will you show us the little man and woman?" The girl looked at them curiously, then drew the yellow silk handkerchief she sometimes wore round her head out of her pocket and began to smooth out the creases in it with her hands. "You really seem quite excited," she said in her usual voice. "You should be calm. Calmness gathers in and hides things like a big cloak, or like my shawl does here, for instance," and she looked down at the ragged covering that hid the pear drum. "We have done all the things you told us," the children cried again, "and we do so long to hear the secret." But the girl only went on smoothing out her handkerchief. "I am so very particular about my dress," she said. They could hardly listen to her in their excitement. But do tell if we may see the little man and woman, they entreated again. We have been so very naughty, and Mother says she will go away today and send home a new mother if we are not good. Indeed, said the girl, beginning to be interested and amused. The things that people say are most singular and amusing. There is an endless variety in language. But the children did not understand, only entreated once more to see the little man and woman. Well, let me see, the girl said at last, just as if she were relenting. When did your mother say she would go? But if she goes, what shall we do? They cried in despair. We don't want her to go. We love her very much. Ah, what shall we do if she goes? People go and people come. First they go and then they come. Perhaps she will go before she comes. She couldn't come before she goes. You had better go back and be good, the girl answered suddenly. You are really not clever enough to be anything else, and the little woman's secret is very important. She never tells it for make-believe naughtiness. But we did do all the things you told us, the children cried despairingly. You didn't throw the looking-glass out of window or stand the baby on its head. No, we didn't do that, the children gasped. I thought not, the girl said triumphantly. Well, good day. I shall not be here tomorrow. Good day. Oh, but don't go away, they cried. We are so unhappy. Do let us see them just once. Well, I shall go past your cottage at 11 o'clock this morning, the girl said. Perhaps I shall play the pear drum as I go by. And will you show us the man and woman? They asked. Quite impossible unless you have really deserved it. Make-believe naughtiness is only spoilt goodness. Now, if you break the looking-glass and do the things that are desired. Oh, we will, they cried. We will be very naughty till we hear you coming. It's a waste of time, I fear, the girl said politely. But of course I should not like to interfere with you. You see, the little man and woman, being used to the best society, are very particular. Good day, she said, just as she always said, and then quickly turned away. But she looked back and called out, 11 o'clock. I shall be quite punctual. I am very particular about my engagements. Then again the children went home and were naughty, oh so very, very naughty that the dear mother's heart ached and her eyes filled with tears, and at last she went upstairs and slowly put on her best gown and her new sunbonnet, and she dressed the baby in all its Sunday clothes, and then she came down and stood before Blue Eyes and the turkey. And just as she did so, the turkey threw the looking-glass out of window, and it fell with a loud crash upon the ground. Goodbye, my children, the mother said sadly, kissing them. Goodbye, my Blue Eyes. Goodbye, my turkey. The new mother will be home presently. Oh, my poor children. And then, weeping bitterly, the mother took the baby in her arms and turned to leave the house. But, Mother, the children cried, we are... And then suddenly the broken clock struck 10:30, and they knew that in half an hour the village girl would come playing on the pear drum. But, Mother, we will be good at 11:30. Come back at 11:30, they cried. And we'll both be good. We will indeed. We must be naughty till 11 o'clock. But the mother only picked up the little bundle in which she had tied up her cotton apron and a pair of old shoes, and went slowly out at the door. It seemed as if the children were spellbound and they could not follow her. They opened the window wide and called after her, Mother, Mother, oh dear Mother, come back again. We will be good. We will be good now. We will be good forevermore if you will come back. But the mother only looked round and shook her head, and they could see the tears falling down her cheeks. Come back, dear Mother, cried Blue Eyes, but still the mother went on across the fields. Come back, cried the turkey, but still the mother went on. Just by the corner of the field she stopped and turned and waved her handkerchief, all wet with tears, to the children at the window. She made the baby kiss its hand, and in a moment mother and baby had vanished from their sight. Then the children felt their hearts ache with sorrow, and they cried bitterly just as the mother had done, and yet they could not believe that she had gone. Surely she would come back, they thought. She would not leave them altogether. But oh, if she did, if she did, if she did. And then the broken clock struck 11, and suddenly there was a sound, a quick, clanging, jangling sound with a strange discordant one at intervals, and they looked at each other while their hearts stood still, for they knew it was the pear drum. They rushed to the open window, and there they saw the village girl coming toward them from the fields, dancing along and playing as she did so. Behind her, walking slowly and yet ever keeping the same distance from her, was the man with the dogs whom they had seen asleep by the Blue Lion on the day they first saw the girl with the pear drum. He was playing on a flute that had a strange shrill sound. They could hear it plainly above the jangling of the pear drum. After the man followed the two dogs, slowly waltzing round and round on their hind legs. "We have done all you told us," the children called when they had recovered from their astonishment. "Come and see, and now show us the little man and woman." The girl did not cease her playing or her dancing, but she called out in a voice that was half speaking, half singing, and seemed to keep time to the strange music of the pear drum. "You did it all badly. You threw the water on the wrong side of the fire. The tin things were not quite in the middle of the room. The clock was not broken enough. You did not stand the baby on its head." Then the children, still standing spellbound by the window, cried out, entreating and wringing their hands, "Oh, but we have done everything you told us, and Mother has gone away. Show us the little man and woman now, and let us hear the secret." As they said this, the girl was just in front of the cottage, but she did not stop playing. The sound of the strings seemed to go through their hearts. She did not stop dancing. She was already passing the cottage by. She did not stop singing, and all she said sounded like part of a terrible song. And still the man followed her, always at the same distance, playing shrilly on his flute. And still the two dogs waltzed round and round after him, their tails motionless, their legs straight, their collars clear and white and stiff. On they went, all of them together. "Oh, stop," the children cried, "and show us the little man and woman now." But the girl sang out loud and clear, while the string that was out of tune twanged above her voice. "The little man and woman are far away. See, their box is empty." And then for the first time the children saw that the lid of the box was raised and hanging back, and that no little man and woman were in it. "I am going to my own land," the girl sang, "to the land where I was born." And she went on toward the long straight road that led to the city many miles away. But our mother is gone," the children cried. "Our dear mother, will she ever come back?" "No," sang the girl. "She'll never come back, she'll never come back. I saw her by the bridge. She took a boat upon the river. She is sailing to the sea. She will meet your father once again, and they will go sailing on to the countries far away." And when they heard this, the children cried out, but could say no more, for their hearts seemed to be breaking. Then the girl, her voice getting fainter and fainter in the distance, called out once more to them. And but for the dread that sharpened their ears, they would hardly have heard her, so far away was she, and so discordant was the music. "Your new mother is coming. She is already on her way, but she only walks slowly, for her tail is rather long, and her spectacles are left behind. But she is coming, coming, coming." The last word died away. It was the last one they ever heard the village girl utter. On she went, dancing on, and on followed the man. They could see that he was still playing, but they could no longer hear the sound of his flute, and on went the dogs round and round and round. On they all went, further and further away, till they were separate things no more, till they were just a confused mass of faded color, till they were a dark, misty object that nothing could define, till they had vanished altogether and forever. Then the children turned and looked at each other and at the little cottage home that only a week before had been so bright and happy, so cozy and so spotless. The fire was out, and the water was still among the cinders. The baking dish and cake tin, the fish slice and the saucepan lid, which the dear mother used to spend so much time in rubbing, were all pulled down from the nails on which they had hung so long and were lying on the floor. And there was the clock all broken and spoilt. The little picture upon its face could be seen no more, and though it sometimes struck a stray hour, it was with the tone of a clock whose hours are numbered. And there was the baby's high chair, but no little baby to sit in it. There was the cupboard on the wall, and never a sweet loaf on its shelf. And there were the broken mugs, and the bits of bread tossed about, and the greasy boards which the mother had knelt down to scrub until they were white as snow. In the midst of all stood the children, looking at the wreck they had made, their hearts aching, their eyes blinded with tears, and their poor little hands clasped together in their misery.
"Oh, what shall we do?" cried Blue Eyes. "I wish we had never seen the village girl and the nasty, nasty pear drum." "Surely Mother will come back," sobbed the turkey. "I'm sure we shall die if she doesn't come back." "I don't know what we shall do if the new mother comes," cried Blue Eyes. "I shall never, never like any other mother. I don't know what we shall do if that dreadful mother comes."
"We won't let her in," said the turkey.
"But perhaps she'll walk in," sobbed Blue Eyes.
Then Turkey stopped crying for a minute to think what should be done.
"We will bolt the door," she said, "and shut the window, and we won't take any notice when she knocks."
So they bolted the door and shut the window and fastened it. And then, in spite of all they had said, they felt naughty again and longed after the little man and woman they had never seen, far more than after the mother who had loved them all their lives. But then they did not really believe that their own mother would not come back, or that any new mother would take her place. When it was dinner time, they were very hungry, but they could only find some stale bread, and they had to be content with it.
"Oh, I wish we heard the little woman's secret," cried the turkey. "I wouldn't have cared then."
All through the afternoon they sat watching and listening for fear of the new mother, but they saw and heard nothing of her, and gradually they became less and less afraid lest she should come. Then they thought that perhaps when it was dark their own dear mother would come home, and perhaps if they asked her to forgive them she would. And then Blue Eyes thought that if their mother did come, she would be very cold. So they crept out at the back door and gathered in some wood, and at last, for the grate was wet and it was a great deal of trouble to manage it, they made a fire. When they saw the bright fire burning and the little flames leaping and playing among the wood and coal, they began to be happy again and to feel certain that their own mother would return, and the sight of the pleasant fire reminded them of all the time she had waited for them to come from the post office, and of how she had welcomed them and comforted them and given them nice warm tea and sweet bread and talked to them. Oh, how sorry they were they had been naughty, and for that nasty village girl. They did not care a bit about the little man and woman now, nor want to hear the secret. They fetched a pail of water and washed the floor. They found some rag and rubbed the tins till they looked bright again, and, putting a footstool on a chair, they got up on it very carefully and hung up the things in their places. Then they picked up the broken mugs and made the room as neat as they could, till it looked more and more as if the dear mother's hands had been busy about it. They felt more and more certain she would return, she and the dear little baby together, and they thought they would set the tea things for her, just as she had so often set them for her naughty children. They took down the tea tray and got out the cups and put the kettle on the fire to boil and made everything look as homelike as they could. There was no sweet loaf to put on the table, but perhaps the mother would bring something from the village, they thought. At last all was ready, and Blue Eyes and the turkey washed their faces and their hands, and then sat and waited, for of course they did not believe what the village girl had said about their mother sailing away. Suddenly, while they were sitting by the fire, they heard a sound as if something heavy was being dragged along the ground outside. And then there was a loud and terrible knocking at the door. The children felt their hearts stand still. They knew it could not be their own mother, for she would have turned the handle and tried to come in without any knocking at all. "Oh, Turkey," whispered Blue Eyes. "If it should be the new mother, what shall we do?" "We won't let her in," whispered the turkey, for she was afraid to speak aloud, and again there came the long and loud and terrible knocking at the door. "What shall we do? Oh, what shall we do?" cried the children in despair. "Go away," they called out. "Oh, go away. We won't let you in. We will never be naughty any more. Go away, go away." But again there came a loud and terrible knocking. "She'll break the door if she knocks so hard," cried Blue Eyes. "Go and put your back to it," whispered the turkey, "and I'll peep out of the window to see if it's really the new mother." So, in fear and trembling, Blue Eyes put her back against the door, and the turkey went to the window and, pressing her face against one side of the frame, peeped out. She could just see a black satin poke bonnet with a frill round the edge and a long, bony arm carrying a black leather bag. From beneath the bonnet there flashed a strange, bright light, and Turkey's heart sank and her cheeks turned pale, for she knew it was the flashing of two glass eyes. She crept up to Blue Eyes. "It is, it is, it is," she whispered, her voice shaking with fear. "It is the new mother. She has come and brought her luggage in a black leather bag that is hanging on her arm." "Oh, what shall we do?" wept Blue Eyes. And again there was the terrible knocking. "Come and put your back against the door too, Turkey," cried Blue Eyes. "I'm afraid it will break." So together they stood with their two little backs against the door. There was a long pause. They thought perhaps the new mother had made up her mind that there was no one at home to let her in and would go away. But presently the two children heard through the thin wooden door the new mother move a little and then say to herself, "I must break open the door with my tail." For one terrible moment all was still, but in it the children could almost hear her lift up her tail, and then, with a fearful blow, the little painted door was cracked and splintered. With a shriek the children darted from the spot and fled through the cottage and out at the back door into the forest beyond. All night long they stayed in the darkness and the cold, and all the next day and the next, and all through the cold, dreary days and the long, dark nights that followed. They are there still, my children. All through the long weeks and months have they been there, with only the green rushes for their pillows and only the brown dead leaves to cover them, feeding on the wild strawberries in the summer, or on the nuts when they hang green, on the blackberries when they are no longer sour in the autumn, and in the winter on the little red berries that ripen in the snow. They wander about among the tall, dark fir trees or beneath the great trees beyond. Sometimes they stay to rest beside the little pool near the copse where the ferns grow the thickest, and they long and long with a longing that is greater than words can say to see their own dear mother again, just once again, to tell her they'll be good forevermore, just once again. And still the new mother stays in the little cottage, but the windows are closed and the doors are shut, and no one knows what the inside looks like. Now and then, when the darkness has fallen and the night is still, hand in hand, Blue Eyes and the turkey creep up near to the home in which they once were so happy, and with beating hearts they watch and listen. Sometimes a blinding flash comes through the window, and they know it is the light from the new mother's glass eyes. Or they hear a strange muffled noise, and they know it is the sound of her wooden tail as she drags it along the floor. If you've made it this far, you're one of us. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every week I bring you strange old stories from around the world, and you wouldn't want to miss anything. Thank you for the support, and I will see you next week.